Hi, so I've just had a chat with Graham Sherkor. He's the CEO of Stanley Gibbons, and he's also a co-founder of a new website called Showpiece. Now, you've probably seen in the news, in Stamp Collector magazine, on the website allaboutStamps.co.uk, the sale of the British Guiana 1 cent magenta, the world's most expensive stamp. Stanley Gibbons purchased that back in the summer, and it's on display down in London at their offices in the Strand, and they're democratizing this stamp. So it's a phrase that so I certainly haven't heard of before in philately, and it's fractional ownership is another way of putting it. So basically, we can all own a piece of this very famous stamp. So I asked Graham about the Showpiece website, about how we can go about purchasing a tiny piece of this stamp, even though it's virtual. They're not going to cut it up into pieces, thank goodness. And just to find out, what's the benefits of doing that? Why would a collector want to own a piece of this stamp? And what it involves, the financial implications. So really good chat. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll see you at the end.
So Matt, yeah, please feel free to just jump in with questions or cut me short if I'm rambling. But the idea, the genesis of the whole idea, the whole concept came from early this year. I was at home looking at various different things on the internet and sort of trying to work out how collecting habits have been changing over the last few years. And I think several things have influenced that, not least COVID and people being stuck at home in front of their computers with a bit more time on their hands. As you know, sort of hobbies need two things: time and, to varying degrees, money. And in this part of the world, in a lot of cases, it's the time thing that is most fragile. So I think that probably helped. They're changing technologies in terms of the use of blockchain and the popularity of the types of products that spun out of that, and NFTs, and a number of other different things, all coalescing to get us to a point where people are collecting digitally, in inverted commas, a lot more than they were. And some of that, like I say, might slow because people now aren't stuck inside quite as much, but underlying there's a structural shift. So I started spending a bit of time thinking about whether we could find ways to make the most of that and to be part of that journey. Obviously, our core underlying business is one of a more traditional one, the physical stamp world. But we have, within Stanley Gibbons, we have for the last 2 or 3 years been moving things along to try and increase the capability from a digital perspective as well. So that's where it started, and it quickly moved into looking at the concept of whether fractional ownership would work in one form or another. And then the magenta became available. So I wasn't aware that the magenta was coming up for sale at the point in time that I was starting this work. It was a happy coincidence, shall we say. And that sort of then spurred on the thinking to really try and drive the concept forward, which led to us, as you know, successfully purchasing the magenta, and sort of the ability to bring that to Stanley Gibbons and sort of the home of stamp collecting, as we call it. That in itself was quite a powerful thing for us, and really demonstrated the progress we've made over the last few years. But of course, the next element of that was then it spurred on the formation of Showpiece, which essentially is being positioned as a platform through which we can offer fractional ownership to people in some of the sort of the world's most interesting and culturally significant items. And hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll be putting more things on the platform. Over time, those items may be items that we purchase ourselves. They may be partnerships that we go into with other other companies, other individuals even. A little bit like the partnership with Stanley Gibbons with the 1 cent magenta, but of course there's a sort of, the two entities are close together. But it's things that people can really enjoy and really feel passionate about, and that are important to people in their psyche that we're looking for, and things that we can create an enjoyable digital experience and sort of bridge that gap between the physical and the digital. We're completely aware that collecting a piece of the 1 cent magenta, which is housed here in a display cabinet, that's not the same as being able to touch and feel and put a stamp in your stamp album. So you're not trying to replicate that in the digital world. You're trying to offer the best bits of the digital world to make an enjoyable experience, but it is different. So for example, with the magenta, if you purchase a piece of the magenta, you can digitally sign the back of it. Clearly, 80,000 people couldn't sign the back of the real thing. So there's the two have different attributes. And we're trying also to bridge that gap by offering some physical benefits to ownership as well, be that owner-only viewing events, replicas for people who buy a certain amount, etc., etc. So, but we're not trying to duplicate or cannibalize the traditional stamp collecting world. So that sort of has been the genesis of Showpiece. The first week, we're 3.5 days in. We've had over 1,000 customers from, I think it's now 46 countries.
Wow.
And we're hopefully close to having, or we've sold over 10,000 units. So, and now we're hopefully looking to add more capability, more functionality to the site, improving that user experience as we go through. There's a number of things we've got in the pipeline which we'll be pushing the developers to crack on with, and hopefully that helps push us forward. And that, again, that bridge between digital and physical, and the whole concept of democratizing these really global treasures, if you like. You know, by putting the item on display, people can come and see it, and then you can also own some of it. Those things do go hand in hand.
Would you say the kind of the fractional ownership model is it for stamp collectors, do you think, or do you think a lot of the people that have signed up in these first few days are thinking of it as an investment?
It's a really good question, and it's really interesting to see the customers that have come in this first week, because we did a few surveys of people who had signed up for early access before we launched.
Right.
And one of those things was asking about how they identified themselves in terms of what their purchase motivation was. And the results so far, from what we can see, are very similar to the survey results. So broadly speaking, my belief is that there's probably about 30 to 40% would identify themselves as in some way interested in stamps already.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's probably a similar percentage that are they like the idea of being able to say, I own a piece of this. You know, you're sat at the dinner party trying to make interesting conversation with someone next to you. Oh, did you know, look at this, I own some of this. It's really cool. That sort of conceptual idea. I think there are also a few people who are increasingly familiar with just digitally collecting things, all sorts of things, be it NFTs, this, etc., etc.
Graham, can you explain what NFTs are, just for people?
Yes, sure. So NFTs are non-fungible tokens, is what NFT stands for, and essentially those are digital representations of something. Normally they are pieces of art, so digital pictures, if you like. They can also be videos, etc. So, but some form of digital imagery which you can then purchase. They are non-fungible, i.e. each one is numbered separately to another one, but none of them, as far as I'm aware, although the technology does allow for it, and if there are some, it will be a very small minority, actually have any link back to ownership of a physical item.
Right. Okay.
So that's the primary difference. But there are people who are in that world who see that there's a similarity to this, and they find it interesting. And then there are, you're right, there's probably maybe 10 to 15% at first look who are doing it for more financial reasons.
Yeah.
And you know, we're, as I sort of mentioned at the start, we're very keen to ensure that this is seen as a product to enjoy rather than anything else. But as you will know, in the traditional stamp world, in traditional hobby world more broadly, there is also people who are in those worlds for financial reasons as well.
Yeah, of course.
So what we've seen with this offering, although there's a mix of other people that it's brought into this world, the balance is pretty similar. All of those sort of numbers, there's not exact science behind those, but that's so it's sort of widening the exposure and the appeal and the level of interest in the stamp, but also the hobby as a whole, which I think has got to be a good thing for the hobby and the wider business.
Yeah.
But also then the concept of fractional ownership as something that actually can be really enjoyable and a really exciting experience.
Yeah. Okay. So just to kind of explain how it works. So I would pay £100 and I'd get 80,000th of the stamp, if that's
Correct.
right.
Yes.
That's such a word. And then, you know, if there ever came, you know, if someone came along and said, actually, I want to buy this for 10 million, some very rich person, how would that work in terms of all the owners? Would they have to vote or?
Yeah, so that whole concept of trying to make it open and accessible to all, democratization, etc. One of the things we were very conscious of was what happens in that scenario, making sure that that's fair to everybody. So the structure that we've put in place is such that were someone to come to us and say, actually, I want to buy the whole thing, that would then, exactly as you say, that would, assuming it's a bona fide offer, that would then be put to the owners to vote on. The structure we put in place is such that for the offer to be accepted, 60% of votes cast need to be in favour.
Okay.
And we felt that 51% wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So just a straight majority for something that meaningful. But we also felt that sort of 75 and upwards, you could end up with quite a lot of people who wanted to sell it and then be disappointed.
Yeah.
Stanley Gibbons is retaining, at least for the foreseeable future, a decent interest itself, because, well, we think at this price it's a bargain. But we've also said that we won't vote on any offer. So because if we still have a decent chunk ourselves, we could essentially be the swing vote. That would go against the whole message of democratization. You have a true, honest say in what happens to this item. Yeah. So we've said we won't vote on that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So kind of taking that down to a much smaller level, if, you know, if I purchase my £100 piece, am I able to then sell that, or, you know, will that change in value? So,
I mean, whether it changes in value, I have no idea. Like I said, I think we feel it's something that we want to retain economic exposure to without a shadow of a doubt. In terms of how that process would work, so on day one, the route to exit would be through someone purchasing the stamp as a whole. But what we've also said is that within the next 6 months, we will launch a marketplace facility to allow people to buy and sell to and from each other. So that then becomes a way where we want people to own this and really enjoy being able to say they've got some of this for a long period of time. But we realise not everybody's in that camp, and also that people's circumstances change. So they may want to buy more, they may feel the need to sell it. So we want to provide that flexibility to the owners. So we've said that we will provide that within the next 6 months. We haven't given any more detail around that because it's with the developers now. My small sort of sneaking hope is that it's noticeably shorter than 6 months. Yeah. But I didn't want to give us a false timeline and then we miss it and disappoint people.
Yeah. Okay. So if you know, there's a small proportion of people that are buying their part for investment reasons, I think that's fair to say. So how would they get a return on their investment? Would that just be if someone came and wanted to buy the whole thing?
So that would be one way. The other way would be if and when the marketplace forms, if the natural demand versus supply dynamics result in transactions being done at higher prices than the initial purchase price, they would obviously also see a return on that. And that, you know, that applies to, and I'm sure has relevance for people who aren't necessarily doing it from investment perspective. You know, they're that sort of people are naturally interested to see what happens with things that they own. So it gives flexibility. It also gives more transparency, and it's another level of interest. People want to come and see what the last ones were bought and sold at and things like that.
Yeah, excellent.
Okay. But it's not. Again, it is to provide flexibility and enjoyment. We're not trying to create something where you suddenly find derivatives of the 1 cent magenta and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So so the stamp came over from New York, presumably.
Yeah.
What was that like? What was, you know, what was it like to hold it in your hands? Because I've seen some video footage, I think, of you holding it in the glass case. I
thought it's a really good question. I thought I'd be reasonably relaxed about it and sort of not overly anxious. But when the briefcase came into the room and we opened it up and we took the box out, literally I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. It was a bit of a shiver down the spine and things like that. You really, or I really, at that point felt and appreciated what that piece of paper represented. So that was a massive highlight, and I think some of those photos I've got quite a broad grin on my face. It wasn't forced. A little bit nerve-wracking as well. I mean, it was in a case, but you don't want to drop it.
No, absolutely. Excellent. And so even if people don't, whether they own a part of it or not, it's currently on display, is that right?
That's correct. So it's on display in the Strand Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, and 3 Saturdays before Christmas. Trying to, again, make it available to people who perhaps work during the week, want to bring their children outside of school time. We do intend to continue putting it on display in the new year. We just haven't finalised how frequently and on what dates, but we will make it available in the new year. And you don't have to be an owner to come and see it. Again, that message of making it available to all, democratisation, we want that everybody to be able to come in and see it. If while you're here you want to become an owner, perfectly happy to try to help you through that process, but you can come and see it. It's free. We have a mural on the back wall so you can sign the back of the stamp, and because as you probably know, the folklore of the stamp is it's been signed by several of past owners. Signed or defaced, depending who you ask. But so we wanted to try and replicate that experience as much as we possibly can. We can't have people signing the real thing, of course. No. And there's a few other bits around the exhibition as well.
Excellent. And has that have you had a good response to that so far?
Yep. So it's today is the 3rd day. So Monday and Wednesday. Lots of people coming in, and what we've found is or what I've seen from being out there on the shop floor, so to speak, is that people really take a bit of time. You know, we've got a couple of chairs out there and people sitting down, you have a chat with people, and they're reading all of the supporting material and stuff like that. And actually, even though it's sort of a 2.5 by 3 centimeter piece of paper, that they're actually spending sort of 20 minutes, half an hour with us here, which is really nice, because then you can have a chat with people. You can see how interested and excited some of them are. We've had a lot of people from the Guyanese community.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been really nice to see people coming in and enjoying it.
Excellent. And just finally, do you think this, having the 1 cent magenta on display and the Showpiece website, do you think that will translate to more physical collectors of stamps just because of the interest in it?
It's a good question. I certainly hope so, of course. I think it will. I think naturally, if people become more familiar, more aware of something, you have a natural tendency that some of those people do end up then learning more about the subject and becoming more involved and engaged with it. Obviously, there's huge amounts of wonderful attributes that traditional stamp collecting has, that I think perhaps as an industry we haven't been great at talking about and putting in front of people for a very long time. And I really hope that this is part of that. It's a benefit for the hobby as a whole. It's certainly part of the rationale for doing it.
Yeah, excellent. Okay, just one more question, actually, Graham. Sure. Do you have any specific rarities that you're looking to add to Showpiece in the future, or is it kind of still developing those ideas?
Yep, we've got, I think, since we started, and granted it was only a month or so ago, I've looked at probably 12 different things, seriously considered 2, one of which is an ongoing discussion. So we're going to be very fussy about what goes on there. But we're also very broad, so it can cross any number of categories. It's just within those categories, there's only 1 or 2 things that would really tick the box. So we're not going to rush into putting something else on the platform just to say we've got something else on there. But we are very much actively looking. And like I said, there's one thing we're looking at the minute that I'm hoping would come to fruition. It's quite exciting. It would appeal to a different audience to the magenta, as well as hopefully some of those people who the whole concept appeals to. So yes, we're actively looking, and hopefully there'll be news at some point in the next few weeks or months.
Okay, obviously you can't divulge anything further, but would they be just philatelic items, or would you kind of look at other types of?
No. Specifically, we're not ruling out philatelic items, but we're specifically looking at other items. None of the other items that we've given serious consideration to are philatelic items.
Okay.
If the right philatelic item came along, we're absolutely interested.
Yeah, absolutely.
But no, we're cross-category. The platform should work for.
Excellent. Okay. Well, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, Graham. That's so interesting. And yeah, I have actually signed up to receive information about buying a piece. So I'm toying with the idea of whether I get a little piece of it.
I think you should. And just as a hint, the average transaction size is 9 pieces.
9. Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's pushing the boat out.
But obviously, the highest number is 1, as you'd expect.
Yeah. Okay.
So we welcome everybody. 1 piece, 9 pieces, whatever it is.
So thanks to Graham for talking to us. I hope you enjoyed that interview. Obviously, he had a lot of information to share with us and is very enthusiastic about it. I'd love to know what you think about this idea. Is it a good thing? Do you think it's more of an investment thing than anything else? From what Graham was saying, I don't think it particularly is. I think on the first impressions, you may think, oh, well, this is just for people who want to make a bit of money, buying something virtual. But I think it is more than that, and I think Stanley Gibbons have got their heart in the right place, I guess you could say, with this. So also encouraging to see that people are visiting the stamp in London, having a look at it, and also, you know, that may push more people, perhaps younger people, to find out more about stamps and start collecting them themselves. So for me, will I be buying a piece of the 1 cent magenta? I'm still not sure. I'm going to have a look at it and have a think. It is kind of tempting to, as Graham said, to say at a dinner party or to your friends, you know, I own a piece of the world's most expensive stamp. But what else is involved? You know, it's something I think every one of us will have to kind of think about carefully before we do. As I say, I'd love to know what you think, so do comment in the box below, or you can always contact me. Just go to allaboutstamps.co.uk to find out more about what we do, about Stamp Collector magazine, and also to read more news stories and articles, including those on the 1 cent magenta. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.